This is Power Forward.
All right, welcome back to Power Forward. Justin White alongside Mateen Cleaves. Mateen, what is good, my friend?
Justin, I am flying high. I'm soaring. It's all good, baby. Let's go.
I'm so glad that you dropped the flying high on us today because our guest, well, number one, and it's not often I can say this, but I think our guest today can actually hang with you on the energy level. I mean, he's right up there with you. I don't know if he's on Mateen Cleaves level, but he's pretty darn close. But speaking of flying high, this guest, he has so many great messages he's going to share with us. But one common theme is elevate. And that has to do with, everything from your professional to your personal life. So we're going to get into all of that with Jake Kelfer. He is a motivational speaker. He's a best-selling author. He's also, Mateen, you're going to find this very interesting, he is the founder of his very own basketball combine. So lots of great angles to dive into with Jake. We are pleased to welcome him in now. Jake, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Man, fellas, I'm pumped. We're getting some good combos, and Mateen, I'm gonna match that energy. I mean, we're gonna talk about competing. We're gonna talk about making the life that we live a game. Well, we'll get into this. This is a game right now, and it starts right now, fellas.
I love it.
You know what? You just got this party started, Jake, because I can see Mateen's got his competitive juices flowing now, because now he's really got to bring it based on that. So before we get into the discussion here, Jake, just for our listeners out there, tell them a little bit about you.
Yeah, so a little bit about me is I grew up in Southern California, about an hour next to the beaches. So that was a blessing. Went to USC. Always had a dream of playing for the Lakers. As a Southern California boy, the dream was playing for the Lakers. But by the time I got to high school and I became a 5'8" Jewish kid from the suburbs, those dreams quickly dwindled. Now, much like many kids who have the dream of playing in the NBA, the next dream was, logically, I'm going to be an agent, right? I'm going to be an agent. I'm going to work with the guys. A lot of my friends were going to be players in the NBA, the NFL, MLB, whatever. I was like, well, I'm smarter than those guys. Why don't I represent them? And I went to college to study business and sports, get ready to graduate, think I'm going to be an agent. The agency that I'm going to work for can't hire me. I'm like, damn. So put everything I learned, I'll put my network to work, started really figuring out what I was going to do next. The Lakers offered me a job to work for their corporate partnerships assistant, as a corporate partnerships assistant. And it just so happened that was Kobe Bryant's final NBA season. So that kind of took my life on a new trajectory. And while I was there, I learned some incredible things, had some unbelievable experiences that led me to realizing that I was here to serve a purpose, to give people a greater experience. And I was here to help elevate people to their next life. And so since that time, I've written 2 books, traveled the world as a speaker, started the Pro Basketball Combine, and now work with entrepreneurs, teaching them how to take their business to the next level.
Wow. Impressive. Jake don't mess around. I love it. And let me ask you this, Jake, because you talked a little bit about it. Your dreams to be college basketball player, professional basketball player, and that kind of took a detour. In that moment, take me back to that moment, because I'm sure it wasn't just easy, you know what I mean? Because you got a dream, you know what I mean? So take me back to that moment when you had to decide, kind of change and detour from a lifelong dream you had.
So growing up, I'm very blessed to have 2 parents, and they supported me in the dream of going to the NBA. But they also knew, and they weren't going to tear my dreams apart, but they also knew that I needed to have a backup option, right? I needed to have an education. And so they always told me to focus on my studies, my academics, and I had this thirst for knowledge from a young age. So I was also very self-aware, okay? And I think this is sometimes a huge thing when we talk about our dreams and our ambitions, is that where we want to go in our dreams can only get there if we're truly self-aware of who we are as a human being, right? And if we're willing to take the right action. So I remember playing on my driveway thinking in my head, like, I'm going to the NBA. And so I did layups every single day, right? I did the fundamentals. I shot free throws, pretending I was in a sold-out arena. I would do everything because I was like, somebody's watching right now. Someone's watching me right now, and I'm going to prove that I belong, because I knew I had things to overcome. Now, that said, going back to this self-awareness, I realized by the time I got to high school that when my friend was better than me, and he was getting these looks at D1 schools, and I wasn't as good as him, and I wasn't getting those looks, I realized, that dream was maybe going to have to change, or there was going to need to be another path. But it came time, by the time we got to our summer year of going into our senior year, which is a big year for getting scholarship offers or getting, invites. For me, I realized in that summer that I wanted to pursue my dream of going to USC over potentially playing at a smaller school. And I believed that the dream that I initially set out to achieve, which is being ultimately the best basketball player I could be, I had done that, but just it didn't ever reach the level of the NBA. And when I got the job, talk about how things come to fruition, even though it may be in a different way than we expect. When I got the job working for the Los Angeles Lakers, in a way, my life had come full circle because
that was draft night.
That was the dream. That was draft night. And I made a social media post that said, with the first pick of the 2000 corporate partnerships draft, they select Jake Kelfer, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wearing my Lakers tie, my Lakers hat. I put on the hat with the suit. I'm in my living room like I'm living the dream here. But I think there's so much to unpack there. But I love you asking me that of like, what happens when that dream isn't going to happen, And it's so important to figure that out because it can be devastating. You work so hard and it doesn't happen. And luckily for me, I was able to learn and adjust early on in my life.
Hey, man, if it makes you feel any better, I, too, was a short Jewish white kid who had dreams of playing pro basketball. I knew pretty early it wasn't going to happen, so I decided to, go to Syracuse and cover the games instead of actually playing the game. So, like you said, being self-aware really helps. You mentioned the job at the Lakers, and to grow up idolizing that team and then to get the job with the team and be there, like you said, for Kobe's last season, people would think you'd be crazy to walk away from an organization like that. One of the best franchises, not just in basketball, but in all of sports. And you said some things happened that kind of led you to some discoveries about yourself and what you really wanted to do. Tell us about that process and how you decided you were going to go on this completely different path and go and start writing books and motivating people through public speaking.
All right, so I'm working with the Lakers, and my job was in the corporate partnerships division. So one of my main roles on game nights was picking all the contestants for like the halftime half court shot, for doing the skills challenges, the 3-point shots, whatever. And there was one experience. I'm in the elevator. Okay, now I'm about to go meet someone on the court level. And I'm like, this is great, right? I get to be on the court watching Kobe Bryant, the guy who I've watched more. I spent more time with Kobe than probably anyone in my life outside of my family from the TV, right? He brought me so many of my greatest memories. And now I get to be on the court watching him play the game that I love so much. And I'm getting in the elevator. And I think it's just going to be a normal elevator ride, right? Because most of the time you just get in the elevator, you go down the stairs. But this elevator ride, something magical happened, okay? The doors are about to close. A hand jumps in. The doors start to open. Jerry West walks in the building, okay? Walks in the elevator. Now, I want to put something in perspective here for everybody. It's not just like I'm seeing Jerry West and I know who he is. Okay, growing up, we had a room called the Lakers room in our house. Painted purple and gold, memorabilia. Every Lakers cover Sports Illustrated magazine hung up in that room. I mean, it's a big deal. And of course, you don't be a fan when you're working. You be a professional, right? So I'm in there and I'm being professional. I say hi to Jerry, address him by his name because obviously I know him, but I'm not expecting anything to happen from this situation. The person working the elevator looks at Jerry and he goes, "What floor do you want to go to?" Jerry looks at him and says, the event level, the court level, right? Because he's got courtside seats. I mean, he's Jerry West. And the person working the elevator has no clue who he is. No clue who he is. But he asked Jerry, he says, "Do you have your credential?" And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, he didn't. And so he asked Jerry, and Jerry looks at him and he says, "I don't have my credential. What can we do?" The person says, "Well, I'm gonna have to ask you to step off because," pointing at me, "this gentleman needs to go down. He's got work to do." And I was like, "Are you serious? Like, what's about to happen?" So Jerry starts to get off. I mean, he's a class act all around. And right as he's about to get off, I blurt out, wait. He's my guest. Jerry, you're with me. I got you.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, shoot. Like, what did I just do? The person working the elevator looks at me and he goes, "Are you sure?" And I look at Jerry, and when you're kind of waiting for that nod of approval from someone else, I wait for that nod from Jerry. He gives me that nod. I look at the person working the elevator. I give him the same nod, and I say, "Yeah, he's with me." So the next 14 seconds, you guys, we go down the elevator ride. It's pretty quiet, a little bit uncomfortable and awkward for all of us. We step outside. Glorious ride. And as we're about to walk out, I'm wondering, is Jerry going to be pissed that the guy didn't know who he is? Is he going to be pissed that I had to stand up for him? Is he going to be pissed that someone who he has no idea who I am made some comments to keep him in the elevator. As we're about to walk and disperse and go our separate ways, he sticks out his hand, shakes my hand, and says, "Thank you. I appreciate what you just did for me." And in that moment, I realized that it doesn't matter what we've accomplished in our life. It doesn't matter how much money we have, how much fame we have, how much status we have. It doesn't matter about anything. The only thing that matters is that we are all people and we all have the same basic desires in our life. To be loved, to be heard, to feel that we're valued, to be complimented, to feel that we belong. And in that moment, Jerry West taught me the power that one person can have on somebody else. And I knew that I had to find a way to give everybody that I encountered that same experience, that same joy, that same feeling. And that started what became the dominoes that have led me down the path that I'm on today.
Wow, man.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Who can like Jerry West? First of all, bad. Shame on the guy that didn't know who Jerry West was. You know, like, come on, you got to know Jerry West. But kudos you. I mean, they got it. That had to be a cool moment, man. Wow, that's crazy. Now, have you? Did you have? I know you were there for Kobe's last hurrah. Well, is there anything that you were able to take from that? Because, you know, being around such a great player and, you know, his last run at it, I was actually around Kobe. I met him back in 1996. I'm much older than you. I actually played against Kobe at the McDonald's All-American game, and I met him on a whole nother level years ago. But to see who he became, I wasn't surprised. He was just different. You know, he had that it about him. So was there anything that you might have learned, you know, being around that whole, you know, situation in Kobe's last run at it?
Yeah, there were a couple things for sure. And I'd say one of the biggest things that I took away, because I love the game, right? Mm-hmm. I love studying and saying, why are people better than other people? Because everyone's got great talent, but why can some people separate themselves? And this was a very young team at the time. D'Angelo Russell, Julius Randle, right? It was really young. Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance Jr., and Kobe. And the games that Kobe played, the difference between the way he would warm up and approach the pregame versus some of these young guys was night and day. He would go out there, and everyone knows, not only do we yell Kobe when we throw something in the trash can, but we do the same fadeaway every single time. Kobe did that same fadeaway every single time from the elbow and then from the baseline. And you watch him at practice because he's also not just doing what he knows he needs to do to perform at a high level, but he's also doing what he can with his energy levels, right? He's taking that into account. So his repetitions, he's not going to do 5 million anymore. He's going to do 500, but they're going to be perfect repetitions. And so there's two big elements that I want to talk about here. One is doing the thing that you know is going to produce you the results. And two, being great at one thing and giving people the best results possible, doing that thing over and over and over again. And those were two things just from his warm-up routine that I was able to see. And then from a more holistic standpoint, I would say seeing the way Kobe inspired the Laker fans, seeing the way that people acted when he would walk out and give them a high five, seeing that, again, reinforced that we all have the power to make that impact on somebody else. And for Kobe, you know, when a guy's on a stage like that, if you give somebody a great experience, they're going to talk about that forever. And your reputation is going to build up that way. If you give someone a bad experience, one person, that can start to ruin your reputation with everyone they know. And then people start to tell their friends, oh, I heard this guy was, right? The same thing goes for us as business owners. Same thing goes for us as sales professionals. Same thing goes for us as just general human beings. How we treat people, it'll spread. And so how do you want to be remembered? What is the legacy you're trying to create? So those are some of the things that I took from Kobe from afar during that season.
It's great stuff. Yeah, there you go, Mateen, full circle. You know, from you playing against Kobe or with Kobe in that McDonald's All-American game to Jake being around the team and working for the team during his final season. And I got to ask you, Jake, you know, because you have this, you know, moment of clarity, if you want to call it that, during that elevator ride and that experience with Jerry West. And you decide to go into business for yourself, you know, leave the full-time stable job with the Lakers and go and do your own thing. So what's the game plan at that point? I mean, I know because you said you knew you could impact people by making them feel a certain way. But there's probably a big gap between that and then actually launching a business, having a plan in place, and then figuring out how you're actually gonna do it. and then grow. So kind of take us through how you got the business up off the ground and what your plan was to make it a success.
So when I was working with a team and I had this Jerry West experience, that started all of the things that would come next, right? And the first thing that came next, and now looking back on it, it's much easier to see what all happened. But in the moment, I had no idea how it was all falling into place, right? So after that, though, about a week later, I came home and I asked myself 2 questions. I said, what do I know? What do I know a lot about? What am I good at? What do I know? And second question was, how can I help people? Trying to figure out what can I do to give people that experience. That led me to saying, well, I'm a year out of school. I have an incredible job. I got all the internships I ever wanted. I know how to network. I know how to interview. I know how to use social media to boost my job status, all this stuff. I'm going to teach my brother who was in college at the time and all my fraternity brothers. I'm going to teach them how to do this so they can spend more time partying and having more fun, but still get all the jobs they want. I was like, brilliant, right? I was like, that's what I know, and that's how I can help people. So I start writing a bunch of blog posts, and of course, nobody reads them at all. And I'm like, damn. Then I talked to a mentor of mine, someone who I've always looked to for advice, who has written books, who's a professor at UCLA. He's the man. And he says, Jake, this is good. Like, my students need this right now. And I was like, what, really? He goes, you need to make this into a book. I said, I'm 22, 23 years old. You want me to write a book on career development, less than a year removed from school? And he said, yeah, I do. And I was like, all right, I'm doing it. Let's go. So I started writing a book, and I would leave super early, get to the Lakers office early, write in my car for an hour or two before the Lakers job would start. And I do that over and over and over again. Now, here's the issue. I have no idea what I'm doing in terms of writing a book. I always thought that I was going to be this agent, make a ton of money, buy a house, buy an island, and then settle down and start doing all these things that I wanted to do. Speak, give back, write books. But all of a sudden, in a split second, I went from going to live my entire career and then doing that to doing that right now and seeing what could come of it. So I'm writing this book, and I'm like, well, when do I launch it? I don't know what I'm doing. And I say, okay, well, we're not making the playoffs. You know, we definitely didn't have an A-quality team that year. And I knew Kobe was retiring at the end of the season. So I said, you know what? Kobe's retiring, I'm retiring, and I'm launching the book on the first of the next month. And so that's how I decided to launch my first book and get it out to the world, which ended up becoming Elevate Beyond, which was all about how to stand out in the job market and discover your passion. Now you take that. I still don't know what I'm doing. But then people are like, well, how are you going to get this message out? And I'm thinking to myself, well, I just wrote this book. Like, let me enjoy this. Like, this was awesome, right? Like, let me just soak this in. And they're like, well, how are you going to continue to get the message out? Like, didn't you write it to make a difference? And of course I said, yeah, I did. And they said, well, do you know you can get paid to speak on stage? People will pay you money to listen to you if you have something good to say. And that was all I needed to say. Well, now I'm a speaker, right? And so I started figuring it out. And meanwhile, as I'm going through this, you know, I still had this idea of being an agent. So I'm still networking, trying to connect the dots, thinking that the book, thinking that speaking would help me get by until an agency wanted to bring me on, or until I decided to, you know, skip being an assistant and jump straight into being a coordinator or an assistant, like runner or whatever, doing things that would get me closer there, right? Because I'm all about doing things that other people aren't willing to do to make yourself more valuable. The more valuable you become, the more irreplaceable you are, the more impact that you can have. And so as I'm doing this, as I'm creating this, I'm starting to speak. I'm reaching out to anybody and anybody who will listen to me, saying, I can do this, I can do that, selling it before it happens. And I start to get some nibbles. And again, these things start over time. It's building up. I'm learning. I'm seeing what works, what doesn't. I'm evolving. But as luck would have it, I get a couple gigs, and I realize that's how incredible it feels to be on stage and impact people. And I was like, this will always be a part of me, which then kept the ball rolling for me.
Wow, man. Wow.
Hustling.
Man. Yes, hustle and bustle. And you mentioned something, and let me dive into it a little bit. You mentioned something in doing things that other people are not willing to do. And I think it's very important for our listeners to kind of understand, you know, what you're talking about when you say that. And because that can be in sports. You know, I had a guy on our team when I played with Sacramento Kings, Gerald Wallace. He was a young guy, and he was get to the gym 3 hours before and stay 3 hours after because he wanted to shoot as good as Hedo Turkoglu and Peja Stojakovic. I said, young fella, you are wasting your time. I love you to death, but you will not ever be able to outshoot those guys on your best day and their worst day. but what you can do is do things that they don't do. Okay. Now you're a slasher. You finish at the basket. You bring so many different things, but, being able to seek it out, you get to a new office, might be a new job, and, bring some value, do something different that others are not willing to do. I think is a heck of a statement. And I want you to dive a little more into that because I think it's important for our listeners to hear.
Yeah, and I'll give some real world examples of what I mean by this that you could do literally every day. Let's take a general email that you're going to send, a sales email or pitching or something. Most people are going to go through the work of finding the guest. They're going to start the outreach, and they're going to send a copy and paste. Maybe, if you're lucky, they'll change the name and actually get the correct name on the email, right? And because I've made that mistake too. I've copied and pasted. I'm like, oh, shoot, you're not Aaron. You're not Justin. Like, oh, man, right? So let's go to a simple example. Do things that other people aren't willing to. Most people are going to send an email, okay? They're going to do it generic. Very few people are going to make one customization. The elite outreaches are going to have the custom subject line. They're going to find a commonality. They're going to know something about your background. They're going to reach out and find something that immediately attracts your attention. Doing something someone else won't do. Let's say someone sends a direct message on Instagram, because we're in the new age of networking and communicating. Instagram direct messaging is elite performance right now. Facebook groups, LinkedIn, all these things, elite opportunities to network, especially right now. Most people are going to send a DM, okay, a message. What you should do is you should send them a copy of your book. You should send them something that's different. Let's take it one step further. Instead of sending them a copy of your book, send them their favorite action figure, favorite movie, or a gift card to their favorite restaurant. Do something that's memorable that immediately separates you from the pack, okay? Those are real examples of how in business we can separate ourselves by doing things that others won't do. And then when you follow this and couple this with being great at the basics, then you become a force to be reckoned with because you're executing at a high level on the things that we know are going to produce results. And now you're making those things even better, creating more success and quicker results, which is ultimately what we strive for in the pursuit of growing our business.
Networking. I mean, that's it right there. I mean, making yourself an elite networker, right? Or elevating your networking game. I mean, make yourself stand out. That's such a huge point to make, Jake, because there's so much competition out there. I mean, whatever business you're in, whether you're a mortgage broker or whether you're a keynote speaker like you, I mean, you're out there competing against other speakers who want to go and get these speaking gigs, right? So it really doesn't matter what business you're in. There's always going to be that element of competition. So you have to find a way to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, and I'll give another example here. When you talk about this competition, because I love to compete, right? And when it comes to speakers, my initial reaction when I started networking and really started growing as a speaker in the world of speaking is I saw speakers as competitors. I was like, me and you were competing for the same stage. And so I wasn't reaching out to them as much because I saw them as like, I got to beat them. And I was willing to do what they weren't. I was trying to get better, trying to find out who are they talking to, who's their testimonials from, looking at all those people, because those were the people that I was hiring. But the minute I started to switch from focusing on competition to beat them rather than to help us both grow, that's when everything changed in my business. The people that I thought were my competitors have now become my biggest referrers. Those are the people that have given me my most amount of my business because they're always asked, who's a great speaker that you can talk to? This is how we have to operate from a competitive mindset in the game of business, is compete to build up, not compete to tear down. Because trust me, and you guys will agree with this in sports, like I will win. I want to win, but it doesn't mean we all can't win in various aspects. And that has been a pivotal change for me in seeing competition in terms of being able to grow at a faster rate.
And that's a good point, Jake. That's a fantastic point. And even I speak to leaders at our company at UWM, and sometimes I tell them, it makes you more valuable if you have 4 or 5 leaders that grow up under you and you're just sending them off to different teams to go lead different teams. Don't try to keep people underneath you, you know what I mean, to make yourself seem bigger than what you are. Or people always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, then maybe you need to find another room to go into. So reaching out to people, helping uplift people and having that mentality, I think is very, very important, not only in the business world, but in life in general.
Jake, so you've got this speaking gig, you've got your first book under your belt. Tell us about the NBA draft combine, because there's already one that the league puts on. It's pretty well known, and they've obviously got their built-in connections and their network. So what is your thought process with saying, hey, I'm gonna start my own combine?
So the NBA combine is awesome, right? Like I love watching the combine every year, and I grew up watching it, right? Seeing which of my favorite players were going to go to the league, and I always studied, like, as a guy that wanted to be an agent, I was studying how much did the media play a role in shaping where guys could potentially end up. Because it's just human nature that when we see things, and whether we see them in person, whether we have a great experience with them, whether we're constantly hearing their name over and over again, we're programmed to start to think more about that person, right? So I started seeing this, and the year after I had written my first book, I had gone to a couple pro days, seeing the agents and their players interact with the scouts and executives, and I was like, gosh, what if there was one of these that could fit all the second-tier guys that weren't like going to be drafted? And then the NBA announced two-way contracts. And I'm very excited to hear what you guys have to say about this, because the NBA announced two-way contracts. And for the listeners who don't know, basically it meant that every NBA team, all 30, had 2 additional roster spots. And you could put that player on the NBA roster or back down to the G League. It would give you more roster space. And the potential salary was $275,000. Whereas in the G League, it was $29,000 to $35,000 or something like that at the time. Well, all of a sudden, playing basketball in America now becomes even more exciting for guys who are trying to make the league and turn their dreams into their reality. Because most people, if you're like, I can go get 80 grand overseas versus 29 in the G League, I might go overseas. Because they want to get paid. That's why they started to play, to take care of their families. And I was like, okay, two-way contracts. Well, where are they going to get these guys? The NBA Combine does an unbelievable job at the top 60 to 70 prospects. But what about the next tier? And then also, what about all the guys that are coming from not high major schools, but are coming from mid-major schools, but maybe aren't getting the love they need because there's only 70 spots, and we know these 70 guys. But with CJ, with Dame, with some of these guys that are starting to come from smaller schools, you're like, oh, man, I can't count this guy out. I can't count this guy out. So I was like, we're going to put together a secondary combine for all the secondary prospects with the hope of getting some of these guys onto potential two-way deals. That was like the initial thought process. And over the course of the next 5 months, we put it all together. We found the venue. We found the 23 guys that ended up coming. We found the teams to get over there, and we put it on. And, even a month and a half before, I was like, is this thing even going to work? Because I had every agent in the game slamming their phone on my face saying, this isn't going to work. Why would we do this? But we got it together. We executed. It went flawlessly. We ended up with 23 guys. 9 went on to sign with a two-way deal. 1 became the G League Rookie of the Year in Antonio Blakeney. We had over half the NBA in attendance in year 1, and that kind of established us as the next best thing for guys who are right on the cusp of getting into the league.
What a story. And, what was it that kept you going with agents, slamming the phone in your face and, people trying to knock down your idea and your vision? Because a lot of people, if it don't come from them, they don't want to support it, first of all. Yeah, but for you to keep going, what was it that kept you going when these people were kind of slamming the door in your face?
So I wanted to be an agent because I wanted to make a difference in these players' lives. Unfortunately, there's some incredible agents out there. Guys that I would say are awesome human beings. I would recommend any player to go to them. And then there are other agents who are a bunch of, and there are agents who are only looking out for their pockets and not for that player's well-being. And that's not the type of agent I wanted to be. So this event was one way that I knew I would give guys real opportunities in the draft process versus an agent blowing smoke up their ass saying, I'm going to get you drafted. Don't worry. Just do this. We're going to keep you out of the attention because we don't want people to know you. No. We want to put you in front of people, and if you're good, and players want to be seen, people that are willing to compete will play no matter what, even if it's got a chance to hurt them. Now, here's the thing. These aren't lottery picks. They can't lower their stock by coming to this event. They can only raise their stock by coming to this event. That's what it is. It's a boosting event. So that was one reason that really kept me going, was because I wanted to really pursue that. The second reason, and this was more of an internal thing, one of the reasons why, going back to I was willing to do what other people aren't willing to do. I was willing to start this entire event without having a huge network, and figure it out because I wanted to be one of the only 24-year-olds in the world to have relationships with all these agents, all the national media, a bunch of NBA contacts, because that would make me more valuable in the world of basketball. And so when agents kept telling me it wouldn't work, I'd be like, watch me, and that's the competitor, right? It's like when people doubt you, it lights the fire inside you. It could say stop, but I had invested in the contract. I wasn't flush with cash. I was self-funding this thing. So we had to find a way to make it work. And so when you have that drive and you have that, like, people telling you can't do it, like, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, and I was so fired up by just the haters. And I was like, watch me. And it was so funny because one of the agents who was like early on, we'll never send a guy to your event. This is a terrible idea. It's never going to work. And then even followed up with an email of why it wasn't going to work. And I'm like, dude, I get it, man. Exactly. You don't think it's going to work. Cool. Just stop. Like, that's it. Right. After that event, literally a week after our first event, the agent texted me and goes, man, I was wrong. That event was awesome. Be on the lookout for us to communicate in the near future. And I was like, well, guess what? If it's between you and another agent and your players are about the same level, guess what player's coming in? Not your guy.
Right.
But I didn't tell him that, but I'm starting to think. The point of all this is, though, when people are telling me that I couldn't, it ignited me to say, yes, I can. And I knew that why I was doing this was greater than just for my own ego or for my own success. It was to do what I believed was the right thing to do, which is give players a platform to turn their dreams of playing pro ball into their reality. And that's what we've done with now 70 guys coming through the program, and every single player except for one playing following our event, with 40-plus Summer League invites, 10-plus two-way contracts, multiple guys playing in their first NBA game, Kendrick Nunn being third on the Rookie of the Year this year. Like, all of these amazing things have come from the event, and it's been cool to be a small part of these players' journeys.
Nice.
Jake, listening to you talk about some of the experiences you've had and some of the obstacles that you've overcome, I think that this term, for some people, it takes on a negative connotation, but it seems like, you have a chip on your shoulder about the doubters, about the people who have said no to you, and you've used it to fuel you. So not in a negative way, but in a positive way. Now, in your career as a speaker, as an author, and when you're making presentations to, whether it be a school or a business or, a group of people within an organization, how much of your own experiences do you incorporate into your messaging? Or are you pulling things from different places? Kind of walk us through how you approach, putting together your presentations when you're up on stage or when you're giving a speech.
Yeah, whether I'm coaching somebody, speaking, of course I'm going to use stories. People want to build an emotional connection. And everybody is going through something similar as you, just maybe in a different way. We're never alone in our doubts or our insecurities. We're never alone in our fears and the worry of making mistakes. Because here's the truth. We're all going to make mistakes. Anytime you try something new, you're likely to make a mistake. And especially when we talk about like sales, like you're going to be rejected so many freaking times. It's unbelievable. But here's the best part. That rejection, if you take it as a rejection, you can allow it to dictate your self-worth and your self-value, which then hurts everything else in your life. Or you can see it as that's not the right person for me. Let's go find someone else, right? There's always the next one. There's 7 billion people in the world. If one person doesn't want to talk to you, there's going to be another person that does. And so when I talk in coaching, when I'm on stage, when I'm doing virtual presentations, I'm always using my stories and examples because I want to have that emotional connection with people, to get them to feel what's going on, to see it, to start thinking of their own experiences that are in alignment with what we're talking about. And then those breakthrough moments, they can now see them happening in their own life because they've seen how it went for me or from a client or from someone else. And that's how we've really been able to help people ignite themselves.
Man, that's good stuff. Now, let me ask you, who inspired you? Was it a player you looked at growing up? Was it a parent? Was it what inspired this go-get that you have burning inside of you?
So there's been a lot of great influences on my life. But, I think for me, I've always had high expectations for myself. I've always wanted to exceed and be incredibly ambitious. Now, this has also become one of my biggest weaknesses, was that I was so future-oriented and ambition-oriented that I was losing sight on enjoying the present moment. Okay. And I've learned that and I've evolved that. And now I'm in a great place and I'm teaching people how to now pursue this relentless dreams while also enjoying the present moment, which gives you more flexibility to do all the things that you really want to do. And so the influences for me growing up were, one, I just had this intrinsic desire. But two, I think it stems from my parents and the way they brought me up. They brought me up not to fear failure or fear making mistakes, but rather to focus on giving 100% effort in the things that I tried. And that was a pivotal thing for me because it's enabled me to go after my dreams, to go after the things that I want. You know, and I think it's an underrated thing, but people telling you that you matter, people telling you that you're loved, people telling you that you can do it, that is sometimes all somebody needs to actually believe that they can do it. And it's something so simple, yet it's something that not enough people tell other people in their work environments, in their friendships, in their relationships. And so when I think of like what makes me a go-getter, it's that I've always known I have people that support me. And I'm always knowing that the effort I give is more important than the potential result that I get. And also being the smallest guy on the basketball court every single time growing up, that will put a chip on your shoulder because now I got to say, I'm going to beat you and I'm 5 inches smaller than you and 100 pounds lighter than you, you know? And for me, when I was in high school, I'm a freshman or sophomore trying out for the varsity team and we're in a good league. We're competitive. I'm inches shorter than everyone else, pounds lighter than everybody else. People are saying, you're never going to make this team. And I'm like, yeah, like, you know, like fire me up in that moment. And I continuously want to do everything that I can because at the end of the day, we got one life to live. We got one game to play, one opportunity, and I want to make the most of it. And if I don't give it everything I got and do everything that I have, then I'm going to regret all of those indecisions or all of that inaction. And that will be way worse than the potential embarrassment, failure, rejection that comes with trying all these new things and putting that first step forward.
All right, so I got to ask you this because I mentioned it at the top of the show. So you've got a couple of keynote presentations. One is called Elevate Your Leadership. One is called Elevate Your Definition of Success. You've got 2 books. One is called Elevate Beyond, and one is called Elevate Your Network. So yes, the common theme here, the word elevate. Why is that word, Jake, such a buzzword for you? What does that mean, and what should our audience know about the word elevate and what it can do for them?
Well, the word elevate, you know, and funny enough, this was a completely random chance that this word popped into my head. I was trying to figure out a title for the first book because, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing, but I needed a catchy title. And I didn't want it to be like things you don't learn in college or career tips 101. I didn't want that. I was like, what's like cool, you know? And elevate popped into my head, and that became the word. But what it's turned into is a symbol for every interaction that I have with somebody, is I want to elevate them to that next level. Every interaction that I have, there's a focus on, are they going to walk out of that interaction with me better than when they walked into that interaction? And elevate is all about next level. It's all about pushing yourself to the limits. It's all about achieving greatness. It's all about enjoying the process. Elevating is getting better every single day.
I know you love that, Cleaves.
Oh, man. Come on, man. I love it. That's what it's about. Elevating, getting better, and prospering every day. That's super big time stuff. You know, I'm trying to think, as I sit here and listen, man, because we have listeners that go through a lot of adversity, and what's your take on that? Because we have people that hit that fork in the road and they, just don't go their way. So what's your take on overcoming adversity?
So I think when it's overcoming adversity, it's understanding that we're all going to go through adversity. We're all going to go through adversity. And again, you're not alone in these doubts or in this adversity, right? The time it's happening may be different than the time someone else. You don't compare your adversity to someone else's, but what you do is you use adversity to give yourself a chance to be stronger than you were before, okay? And when it comes to adversity, we think that to get out of adversity, to overcome it, we have to take a leap of faith, to go for it, to go all in. But what we have to do is take a step of belief before you can take the leap of faith. You need to take that first step. You need to start to believe that the future is possible. A lot of people, when you go through adversity, let's take an injury, right? What do you do if there's a sports injury? where you take care of it and you work your way back one day at a time. If you get fired from a job, what do? You work your way back one step at a time. It doesn't happen 0 to 100 most of the time. Most of the time it happens 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to maybe 4, 4 to maybe 8, 8 to 5. You could go backwards on this journey, and then you keep moving forward. And so my dad always tells me that the only shortcut in life is to start now. Because everybody wants the secret to beating adversity and moving forward, having all the wealth, having all the fame, having all the success. But most people will never take the actions that are necessary to get to those results that people desire. And when you start now and you make a commitment to today, that one action becomes a snowball. And that snowball picks up steam. And when you pick up steam, get out of the way because the doors are getting knocked down. You know what I'm saying? And that is just the way we approach life, because we will all have adversity. We will all have these negative doubts. Accept them, acknowledge them, and then reframe them, because you are not defined by the downs. You are not defined by your ups. You are defined by the person and the legacy that you want to create and the people that you impact in your life.
Man, that's great stuff there. I love the quote from your dad. The only shortcut is now. All right, so a lot of people are going to hear that and say, that's great. I can't wait to start. But then their next question is going to be, okay, how do I do it? How do I actually put it into practice? So what is your advice to actually start doing that?
All right, well, let's do a real world example here. Give me something that people want to start doing that they don't have the courage to right now, or they're scared of trying. What's something?
Start their own business, like you did. A lot of people, they work for a company or they work for somebody else. They've dreamt about it for a long time. They've thought about it. They have no idea, though, where to begin.
If you want to start your own business, right? Let's break it down. A lot of people would say, just start it, right? And you're like, oh, goodness gracious. That's why we're asking this question. So if you want to start a business, well, what are the steps that you need to do to start a business? Well, if you have no idea, you need to get educated. If you have some money coming from another job, you need to go find someone who's done what you've done and start there. If you want to start a business, you need to identify what type of business. What are you going to teach somebody? What kind of product do you want to create? You need to educate yourself, right? You need to start learning. Maybe that's, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to spend 5 minutes. I'm going to spend 5 minutes thinking about my idea. The next day, I'm going to spend 8 minutes thinking about my idea. The next day, you start researching different types of businesses. And I'm talking about the smallest steps that you can do today. Because what happens is people make the transition, and it's great that you go all in, but then people wonder why they don't get the results right away. And oftentimes it goes back to, are you clear on what it is you're trying to start? Are you clear on who it is that you're trying to impact? Are you clear on the methodology of getting your systems in place? All of these things take time. But if you were to start a business, it starts at the beginning, one step. What does success look like to you? Some people want to start a business and make $1 million. Some people want to start a business and make $3,000 a month. Those two people are going to have different plans of attack to move forward to achieve their goals. You have to get clear on the small things. What is success? What do the numbers look like in your business? What type of product are you selling? How much is it going to sell for? What is the cost? Step by step by step. You might not have all of this information available. Start at the beginning. Ask yourself the question, who am I going to help? Where do I find this product? How am I going to make money? Where do my customers live? Who is my customer? And you do one of those things every single day as you start to think about wanting to start a business. In a month, in 2 months, you're going to be sky and high.
It's great advice. To a point you made, though, earlier in the show about being self-aware, to go into business for yourself means you've got to be entrepreneurial, right? You've got to have that sales mindset. To you, what is the most important skill set you can have? What is something tangible that someone can look to and say, okay, if I have this, I think I've got what it takes to be successful in the field of sales?
I think it's a two-parter, especially when you're doing it on your own, okay? I think this might change if you're working for someone else, but if you're working for yourself as an entrepreneur and a small business owner, one of the most important pieces is your mindset. The relationship you have with yourself is one of the most pivotal things that you can have, because so often it's easy to sell someone else's product. It's easy to sell when you're getting a paycheck. It's hard when the paycheck comes from that sale and it's your only hope, right? It's hard when you're investing all of your time into the business to create something. And a lot of people will devalue themselves in the sales process as an entrepreneur versus as an employee.
I mean, you said earlier you have a thirst for knowledge. I mean, but you didn't go to school, for all of psychology or like a lot of this stuff. It's business oriented, but a lot of it is very much focused on mindset. I mean, where have you picked up all this stuff over the years?
All right, so I talked about my parents a little bit, and now this is where you're going to be blown away. My dad's an entrepreneur. He's been an entrepreneur as long as I've been alive. I've seen him get up at 5:30 since I was a young kid, because for him, success was about building this business, but being present for his kids. He never missed a single sporting game from the time I was 5 till the time I was 18 and my last basketball game in high school. Okay, so when I talk about being clear on what it is that you want, that's clarity, right? He knew that he wanted to be present for his kids. He showed me what getting up at 5:30 in the morning looks like and putting in that work before the distractions come. On the flip side, my mom, she's a graduate school professor of the School of Social Work at USC. She's a clinical social worker. She's a psychologist, right? In a way, I've learned everything about empathy and emotional connection, vulnerability, being my own man through her. When you combine those two people, I've had some of the greatest mentors in life success that I could have ever asked for. And I've had 7 years of that. And combined with that, I'm always learning and finding out how can I be better? Because if I don't have the answers and I don't know anything, right? Because the minute you think you know everything, you really don't know anything. Is I don't know so much. So if I ever have a question, I go figure out the answers. I don't wait around and hope it just comes to me or hope I don't need it. I take action on that. That's that one step. And I go find it. I read books. I listen to people. I invest in myself. I do the things that I know will help me get from where I'm at to where I want to go. It's the same as if you're playing a sport. If I wanted to make varsity and I wasn't good enough, well, what did I need to do? I need to hit the weight room. I need to be a better dribbler, quicker on my feet, better shooter, shoot at a higher clip. I need to do all those things. That was going to help me get a better chance, be a better teammate, right? And you do all these different things. The little things are what separates people.
You hit a little bit like your dad, because I know some people think having that work-life balance, I think is important. Some people think, I got to be all in at work, or, I just got to be a family man. It seems like dad mastered both. Is that possible, Jake? Is that possible to do?
And he'll tell you he hasn't mastered it, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm his son, and I think he's done a pretty damn good job. Like he's my hero. But here's the truth. We can have it all. I really believe we can have it all. And what I mean by all is your definition of success. I believe that you can have your definition of success if you're clear enough on it and you know what it is. I also believe, and this could be a huge conversation, I also really believe that people, when we're at work, are not nearly as productive as we think we are. And the studies will back that up. And therefore, you say, I don't have the time to do X, Y, Z. I can't make it home for dinner tonight because I have to work. Well, if you change 1 to 2 things, and I bet you I could look at anybody who wants to talk about this, I could look at it and say, well, here's 1 to 2 things that you can do that's going to get you home by this time. It's about having clear boundaries. As small business owners, as entrepreneurs, there's always something we can do. Always. You will never run out of things to do. But it's about setting these boundaries, scheduling the things that are most important to you, and then sticking to your commitments and owning your. Because if you care about being home for your kids, then that's a commitment. You don't say, no, I can't make it this time. Because that means I can't make it next time. Then your kid starts questioning if you're ever going to make it. And then the relationships that we see all the time with sports parents and their kids are never present. And then there's other products, right? But if you're talking about boundaries, scheduling things, I'm a single guy. I try to schedule 1 date a week or so if I can, or at least time to connect with other people, right? Right now it's a little bit more challenging, but I'm trying to do things that I know are going to bring me fulfillment and give me it all. And that's what we have to do in order to schedule our lives, increase our productivity, go after our definition of success. And you can have the life you've always wanted. I truly believe that you can go get that.
Man, a couple of things there that I want you to follow up on, or I want to piggyback off of. When you talk about being able to have it all, establishing those boundaries, for a lot of people that means establishing a routine. And for so many successful people, it's the same routine. It's like your dad, get up at the crack of dawn and either, fire off some emails before the day gets busy, or get your workout in so you can get your mind right. When you're talking to people about this particular topic, of establishing routines. Is consistency the best thing, or do you encourage them to maybe try new things and throw different wrinkles into a routine? How do you approach that conversation, Jake?
This is such a great question, because routine by definition is doing the same thing, right? That's a routine. Sure. However, I don't think a routine can be the most effective unless there's variability. Okay. And what I mean by that is that the routine you have today may not be the routine you need in a month. The routine you have today may not be the routine you need in a year. Okay. But that doesn't mean you change every element or you switch it up completely. It means you refine and adjust and tune it based off of what it is that you're trying to achieve. So I've had a morning routine and a version of this routine for as long as I can remember. But now, and when I say as long as I can remember, like the last couple of years, you know, I'm still experimenting and exploring everything, but I've had a routine where I've continuously added to it to make it better. And I think a morning routine is key. And my morning routine is I wake up at 5:32 in the morning. I'll give you the quick version.
Hold on, 5:32 you said?
5:32.
Why 5:32 and not 5:30? Okay.
This is where the listeners are going to be like, Jake's crazy. 5:32, and I love numbers. Like I'm a numbers nerd. All right, love math, love numbers. 5 minus 3 equals 2.
Okay.
So I only wake up at times that equate to each other, or there's some mathematical connection between it. Don't wake up at zeros or fives. It just doesn't work for me. That's part A. Part B, my favorite number is 32. Magic Johnson in basketball, Sandy Koufax in baseball. I mean, come on. It doesn't get much better than that. Yep. So 5:32, and I'm sleeping in if I wanted to get up at 5:30. 5:32 is a win.
All right.
No snooze. A snooze is the killer of everything, okay? If you snooze right now and you're listening to this, stop snoozing, okay? Commit to yourself, because otherwise you're telling you that your dreams can wait, all right? Call it cliche, call it whatever. It's true. I've seen it in my own life. When I stopped hitting snooze, everything changed. I do 3 minutes of meditation before my feet hit the ground. Then I jump in and I do an hour to an hour and a half of deep work on my most important tasks. Then I do my journaling. I do my reading. I do my stretching. I do my morning mile run. And then I take a 1 minute cold shower followed by a warm shower to let my thoughts marinate. And then my day begins along with some other things. So that's my morning routine that I consistently do. And by 9 a.m., my day has been won. I've already crossed off the W in the column, and I'm heading to the playoffs in a few short months, right? And so I have that. And then now I've also started to, before I talk about like the next routine, is I've also started to really hone in that. So the mile, I didn't always run a mile in the morning, but I was reading a lot. And one of my guys who works for Tony Robbins was like, dude, you got to get your heart rate up early in the morning. It doesn't have to be a full workout. Because again, I'm not trying to spend 5 hours doing this routine. I'm trying to do it quick and efficiently. And so I started running a morning mile to get my heart rate up, to get a little sweat going, to get the adrenaline flowing, just to get pumped up. And also, if I don't get a workout in later in the day, well, that's a great way to just keep my body moving, right? But then I think it's also really important, and I've really tried to implement this recently, is having a work wind down routine. And for me, one of the things that I would do in my morning routine was set up my day for that day. Set my priorities up. I write down 3 to 5 priorities, set down what it is that I want to achieve, and like go through my schedule. Now I do that as a way to close my day. So at the end of the day, and I typically like to shut down around 6:30, 30 minutes before, I will do the wind down. I'll plan out my schedule for tomorrow, list my priorities, reflect on the day. I use a habit tracker to see if I'm doing things that I say and on what days. And that way I can start the next day fresh. But also the benefit of once I'm done with doing that, I take my mouse out of my computer, I shut it off, and that to me means the workday is done. There's no more emails that I'm focusing on. There's no more of that like, oh, I can jump back into the work and do it. No, it's done. It's my time. It's social time. It's workout time. It's family time. It's reading time. It's whatever. It's date night. It's all of those things. And so I think routines play a big role, but I do think having versatility, even if you want to call it, like if we're referring to it, is a big play in terms of how to achieve peak performance.
I keep going back to that 5:32, man. I'm never going to be able to set my alarm for 5 a.m. or 5:30 or 6 a.m. ever again. Now I got to figure out my own winning combination.
For sure.
And by the way, I'm a Larry Bird guy, so I may have to go with 5:33. Or so I can beat you, Jake. I'm going with 4:33. How about that?
So you could do that personally. 4:33 and 5:33, they don't work for me. There's no math in there. There's no math in there. That would be tough for me. But I respect that. And I'll make another point that you say about 4:30. I don't think waking up at a certain time necessarily dictates how successful your routine is going to be. Like, I love waking up early. I think it's important for me. But early is relative. 4, 4:30, 5, 5:30, even 7, 7:30. You can still accomplish a lot. And when you're in control and you're your own business owner, you create the schedule. There's no one telling you what you can or cannot do. Do what works for you. Get the right amount of sleep. Wake up at the time that you need to. If I am out late or I go out, I will set my timer later. My alarm will be later because I value my sleep, because that starts my day, right? So there's other ways to adjust, and it's okay to make adjustments in habits and routines. We think that because we call it a habit or routine, it has to stay the same, and then we feel guilty if we don't stay on track. The key is to not do it. The key is to make the adjustments, but to never miss 2 days, to set clear rules and boundaries so that you can execute within the confines of being able to adjust and adapt.
Do what works for you. Do what works for you. I love it. That's what's
no doubt. No doubt. Jake, this has been a great conversation, man. Tell our listeners out there, if they want to learn more about you, or how to get in touch with you about having you speak. I know you said you're doing virtual stuff right now, obviously, with everybody being home, but tell people how they can learn more about you.
Yes, first of all, guys, unbelievable conversation. I mean, that was great. I enjoyed it, and I appreciate the questions. If anybody, if you enjoyed this or you want to keep learning more, you can visit my Instagram at Jake Kelfer, or my website, jakekelfer.com. You can get in touch with me those ways to bring me to speak, bring me to talk. We have a couple free resources for you guys and for your audience. We have a guide called 71 Things You Must Do to Turn Your Network into a 6-Figure Business. So that's a free guide that you can get on the website. And you can also grab a copy of Elevate Your Network for free. Just cover a small shipping fee, and we'll get it over to you guys right away.
Love it. Great stuff. Jake, appreciate the time. Continued success with all of your ventures, and thanks for bringing the energy. I know I set you up there to bring it. I didn't have any doubts, but I had to tell Mateen he better be on his A game for this one. You certainly delivered.
Yes, he did. He definitely brought it, baby.
It was a blast, fellas. Appreciate you guys.